Hey guys, welcome to our Akron East online services. So glad that you could join us this morning. My name is Aaron. I'm one of the pastors here at the campus. Just wanted to tell you about a few things that are going on and a few things coming up here soon. First of all, if you were with us last week, you heard about our turkeys and Christmas boxes that we are partnering with a local middle school on Higher Middle School. Thank you guys so much for taking that on, even just the first week. We gave away 58 turkeys and almost over half of our Christmas boxes. We still have some of those left and would love for you to take more. Take a couple if you didn't get to do that yet, and just let us know how we can help you do that. But we are really excited to be doing that, and thank you so much for your help in that. Another thing I want to let you guys know about is we talked about a life group starting next week. If you go to our website, you can actually check out all of our life groups, and we have another one that is going to be launching here in the next couple of weeks that Ryan highlighted last week. So that kind of happened last week. Ryan talked about those. Coming up here soon, we have some really exciting things happening. So first of all, I want to let you know some things are going to start to happen with our Power Kids ministry. That's actually going to start on the week of the 17th, November 17th. We are going to have childcare for those communion services. That's just going to be from 0 to 4 years old. But when you RSVP for that communion service, make sure you check childcare on there, and we will have that available. So we're really excited to start offering that for communion. And then that coming weekend, we are actually going to open up our Power Kids ministry back to full ages. So it's going to be RSVP. It's going to be limited space, so you will need to sign up for that. But we are going to have it fully open. So we are really excited about that. We know the value of being able to have your whole family come to church, and we know that it can be hard to have your kids in the service with you. So we're excited to be doing that. Our team has been working hard on planning it, and we're excited to start offering that here coming up on the 22nd. So excited to let you guys know about that stuff. If you have any questions, visit our website, reach out to us, and let us know. Glad you guys could be with us this morning.
Morning. Hope you're doing well. Ryan here, campus pastor of our Akron East campus of Grace Church, and glad that you chose to connect and glad to be with you, and excited to walk into this last conversation in the series we've been in here for a little bit now called Swimming Upstream. And this conversation has been all about that, kind of looking at the reality of a downstream culture where everything is kind of headed in a certain direction, and we said that followers of Jesus are often put into a situation where we have to go kind of countercultural, where we have to swim upstream and live a little bit differently, think a little bit differently, and approach, kind of view things differently than maybe the majority oftentimes does. And so we said that's going to create a little bit of a situation for us, and sometimes it's going to create a struggle. And often if we're followers of Jesus, we might feel a little bit of tension and maybe even a little bit of loneliness as we are going to tend to approach things, again, not in the majority. And so that's what we've been talking about over the last handful of weeks now. We said, kind of especially in 2020, in COVID season, in election season, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of opinions that are being expressed, and there's a lot of difficulty and a lot happening this year. And we said that followers of Jesus are often going to view circumstances, and even very chaotic circumstances, through a different lens. And so we want to continue to swim upstream and kind of understand, where does that come from? Why do we view things so differently? Why are we going to try to approach things through that different lens? And so that's what we've been talking about. We kind of started off the first week talking about the fact that we have a different identity, that we're defined by different things. We're defined by what Jesus said, not by the circumstances that we find ourselves in or the roles that we fulfill, or the family that we're born into, or even our strengths or weaknesses, that our identity actually goes much, much deeper than that. It goes all the way down to kind of who we are based on what Jesus says that we are. And we said that we're a royal priesthood, we're part of God's family, that we're His chosen possession. And so If you're a follower of Jesus, hopefully that all resonates and makes a ton of sense. If you're not a follower of Christ, that's kind of the identity that is on the table that you can be a part of, right, if you're looking to maybe engage a decision of faith. And so that's what we talked about week 1. We said that our identity shifts, it changes, and then that new identity really causes us to externalize who we are. It causes us to live differently. And we said the primary marker of a follower of Jesus is not how we vote or how we dress. It's not kind of what organization maybe I'm a part of or not. It's certainly not being a judgmental person. That's not the primary definition of a Christ follower. We said that the primary definition of a follower of Jesus is going to be our love. Our love for God, our love for people is to be the thing that defines us and causes us to stand out and be different. All right, it's the thing that causes us to swim upstream, right? It helps us really continue in that. And so we said that love, as we engage that more and more, that creates a lifestyle and kind of a culture of sacrifice, and it creates a culture of unity. And we said last week that unity of followers of Jesus regularly giving them their lives away because of the love that they have creates a message for the rest of the world that says, hey, Jesus is the real deal. He came, he was sent from God, and he was sent to communicate his love to the world. And that's part of what we get to do when we, as followers of Jesus, live differently, swim upstream, is it helps everybody know that there's actually hope to be found and there's a message of love that has come from God. What we're going to do today, as we kind of wrap up the conversation, is we want to see, as I'm swimming upstream, kind of what's the destination that I'm heading towards? Where is this all going? And as I swim upstream, what am I swimming after ultimately? And what's the landing point going to be? And want to talk about this kind of from the 30,000-foot view as a final conversation and kind of see that what I'm looking for in my heart, what I long to have in this life ultimately is really going to be where I find myself when it comes to my relationship with God. So we're going to dive into that conversation today. And I first want to look at something that Jesus said that is a pretty profound thing. He said this in Matthew chapter 5, verse 6, in a section that we call the Beatitudes, where he's kind of teaching people and congratulating people if they find themselves being certain kind of people or certain kind of characteristics. And one of the things he said in Matthew 5, 6 is he says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled." Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. So he's saying, congratulations to the person that just wants to do the right thing. Congratulations to the person who just finds themselves in a situation where they want to have a clear conscience. Maybe they want to know God. They want to be found doing the right things and seeing rightness happen in their life. He says that person is really going to find what they're looking for. They're going to be filled with that kind of righteousness. And it leads me into kind of a train of thought. When we're starting to think about swimming upstream and living differently, we want to start to look at this idea of hungering and thirsting for righteousness, being somebody that is longing to be a certain kind of person, somebody who is found doing right, doing good, kind of being somebody who's close to God. In fact, there's another verse that shows up in Jeremiah, and then we'll see how this shows up on the whiteboard after we read this. Here's what he says in Jeremiah 29:13. He says, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. He's talking to the people of Israel here in Jeremiah. He's saying, in essence, when you look for me, when you seek me, that's what you're going to find. If that's what you're looking for, it's what you're going to find. And at the end of the day, what's fascinating for us is I'm going to look at kind of a trajectory of my life is I really have kind of a handful of options to choose from. And one of the things that I think is fascinating is what Jesus is saying here with blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. What Jeremiah is saying, those who seek me are going to find me, in essence, when they seek me with all their heart, saying at the end of the day, people who are wanting to live life with God, in essence, are going to be granted that desire. At the end of the day, if you're a person that maybe is in a situation, maybe you know Jesus today, maybe you don't, but if you're in a situation where you are longing, not just through a lip service or not just through religion, but you're longing in your heart to have a relationship with God, to not be in a situation where you're trapped in doing the wrong thing over and over and over again. You want to change. You want to be different. You want to find truth. You want to be set free from maybe sinful habits or behaviors. You want righteousness. You want to be with God. Ultimately, what tends to happen is people who want to be with God and want righteousness, often they're going to find their way to that. They're going to be filled. And what's fascinating is God's mercy, His grace, His offer and invitation to be known and to be found isn't just available to some people, it's available to all of us. Right? And I've been in a situation, for me, I grew up as an atheist, basically. I had no religious background. I didn't grow up going to church, didn't grow up hearing the Bible taught. I didn't grow up regularly thinking even things about God. I would just consider myself basically an atheist, right? And for me, most of my life, where even though I knew followers of Jesus, some of them were very, very close friends of mine, I would have looked at maybe an offer that God had for me, and I wasn't interested at certain portions of my life. There were portions of my life where I would kind of stiff arm the things of God. I would push away any invitation to know God more. And maybe that's where you are today, or maybe you have been there too. Maybe even if you grew up in a church, you have been there at certain times where you're like, man, I'm just not into this right now. I don't really want to know God. I don't want to look for Him. And yet, even in that situation, when we are fighting against God, when we're not seeking God, His invitation is available to us. Look at this amazing thing that shows up in Isaiah chapter 65. And here's what Isaiah is going to say. And really, this is a picture of God's heart. Isaiah chapter 65, verse 1, he says, this is God talking. He says, I revealed myself to those who did not ask for me. I revealed myself to those who did not ask for me. I was found by those who did not seek me. To a nation that did not call on my name, I said, here am I, here am I. He goes on, he says, all day long I have held out my hands to an obstinate people who walk in ways not good, pursuing their own imaginations. Man, what God is saying here in the book of Isaiah could be completely descriptive of me as a young man before I found the grace of God, before I found Jesus. Right? I was somebody who, even though God extended Himself to me, I wasn't looking for Him. I was pursuing the things of my own imagination. I was not walking in ways that were good. Even though I was kind of on the downstream path and I wanted to live life without God, God's invitation to me was available. And thankfully, what happens is people who are on this kind of downstream track, people who are running away from God, not interested in God, can find the grace and the mercy and the forgiveness of God as we interact with Christ, and we can switch from going downstream to going upstream. We can jump kind of tracks. And instead of living a life without God, we can begin to live a life with God, right? It's amazing. That is the amazing grace of God. And right, the cross is what makes that all available. And this invitation is out there for all of us. And if you're maybe new to the conversation or unfamiliar of what Jesus did, Jesus didn't come to the planet to condemn us, to judge us, to ruin us, or kind of end our life. None of that is the heartbeat of why Jesus came. He came here for the express purpose of laying His life down, living perfectly, dying innocently, to trade His perfection for our imperfection, to trade His righteousness for our sinfulness, and to give us the ability to beat sin and death by putting our faith in Him, not because of any good thing that we did, but all because of what He has done for us through His sacrifice on the cross. So Jesus does that, and always, as long as I'm here on the planet, drawing breath, that invitation is open to me. the hope of the forgiveness of my sins is open to me, and I can jump from living life without God to living life with God, right? And that's kind of, at the end of the day, those are the two major tracks that we're on. That's kind of what this life is about. And even though there's chaos and confusion all around us, and it feels like the culture of our day is saying all kinds of things about life and what's important and what really matters, at the end of the day, what really matters is answering the question, am I going to live life with God, or am I trying to live life without Him? Right? And that is the question that all of us ultimately have to solve, right, and kind of wrestle for. Now, like I said, as long as we're living life here, I have the opportunity, because of God's mercy and grace, to choose to switch tracks and begin to live life with God. Now, even if I'm here and I'm on this track and I want to live life with God, even if I'm hungry and thirsting for righteousness, I think we all would recognize that it's not this clean in practice. Even if this is the desire of my heart, it's not always going to show up that way, right, in kind of the gritty day-to-day of my life. And I want to make sure I say this, but before we kind of dive in deeper, when we say living life with God, we're not just talking about kind of a casual or a surface level thing. We're saying really to live life with God is that I want what God wants the most, right? That is like the desire of my heart. Not just I want God to be in my life to make my dreams come true, or to make my life maybe easier, or to make what I want to have happen. Instead, it's somebody who says, I want, God, what you want. I want truth. I want a clear conscience. Maybe I have guilt for what I've done. I want to be released of that. I want forgiveness. I want to be a changed person, right? That's the heartbeat of it. So sometimes we can grow up in kind of religious circles and we can kind of fake it. We can kind of look the part. And that's not what I'm talking about here. At the end of the day, that's somebody who attends a religious organization on a regular basis, but really wants to live life without God, right? We want to look like we live life with God, but at the end of the day, internally, we're actually living life without God. And so that's what we're saying. Now, there is a reality to it that we're going to kind of, in practice, be a little bit back and forth in our experience of it. I know I feel this way too, where there's certainly times where, man, I love God. I want to want Him and want to love Him and be with Him and study His Word and be with His people and worship Him and do what He wants me to do. And then there's times where I really don't have the emotion of wanting to do that much. In fact, for me, one of the biggest warning signals in my life is when I don't want to interact with God's Word, or I don't want to be with those people. And let me just say that happens sometimes to me. It's not that I choose not to do that always, but certainly I don't always feel like doing that. And I would just say this, that maybe if you grew up in the church or you're considering being a Christ follower, and you can't even imagine always wanting this the most, I would say it's pretty normal for anybody who's on this track to kind of go up and down in their feelings of wanting to live life with God, their feelings of wanting to hunger and thirst for righteousness. And then at the end of the day, we have to work through that and do our best with God's help to choose what's right? And we're going to fail at it and all the rest. But at the end of the day, the question is, do I want to be with God? Do I want to live life with Him or without Him? Right? It's ultimately the question. Now, here's what starts to happen when I start to realize the big picture of this whole thing is, while this is all playing out here and now in this life, what's going to happen one day is the line is going to be drawn on my life, right? And the ability to switch from this road to this road is going to go away. This is the time frame while we are on the planet where we can switch from saying, I want to go from living without God to begin living with Him. At the end of the day, when my life ends, ultimately, God is going to kind of give me what I want here on the earth in regards to my relationship with Him. If I really actually wanted to be with God, then I'm going to be with God in eternity, right? I'm going to have an eternity with God, right? We would call that heaven. We would call that heaven, right? And that's kind of the end goal of our faith is heaven. Fascinating passage in the book of Hebrews. Here's what it says in Hebrews chapter 16. The writer of Hebrews says this. He says in 11:16, talking about a bunch of people that live by faith, he says, therefore God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he's prepared a city for them. Right before that, he says, instead they were longing for a better country, a heavenly one. Right? They're longing for a better country, a heavenly one. He's saying the people of God, they don't look at their life here on the planet and say, man, this place, this country that I'm in, the nation that I'm in, the city that I'm in, the job that I'm in, this is not my landing point. This isn't my home. What I'm ultimately looking for is a better country. I'm looking past the circumstances of the day that I find myself in the here and now. What I'm looking for is a heavenly country. They're almost saying, man, I'm not willing to kind of settle into this, the brokenness of this. There's much, of course, beauty to experience here on the planet, but I'm looking even past that to the perfection of what heaven is going to be like one day, and that is where my heart is. It says they were longing for this better country. And I know sometimes when we think about eternity with God or we think about heaven, there's all kinds of pictures that come to mind, and most of those are not accurate, right? A lot of times we tend to think of heaven, we think of people floating in the clouds, or maybe you think of a harp, or you think of an eternal church service, which, I mean, think church is great and all, but I don't want to sit in church forever either, or I doubt that most of us are drawn to that. Instead, what we need to think of is heaven is going to be a real physical place that we're really, really, really going to want to be. I'm just think of maybe your favorite place you've ever been to, or some of your top favorite places to experience here on the planet, and those would be maybe just a small, minute fraction of the kind of enjoyment of what we're going to have one day in heaven when this earth is destroyed and remodeled and rebuilt. There's a new heaven and a new earth that we're going to live on one day. So when you think of heaven, you need to think of a physical place that is like this, but without all the chaos, without all the destruction, without all the sin, the death, the disease, the natural disasters, the hate, and the disunity. Think instead of a perfected place that we can enjoy and explore and live in kind of forever and ever. And one that comes to my mind, I had an amazing opportunity not too long ago to go visit Montana. And for me, I'd never been out west, and so I'd never seen the kind of amazing sights that the West has to offer, right? Kind of western part of our country where there's mountains and crystal clear water, and the experience of just being there it caused me to be awestruck. In fact, I took some pictures when I was there. I look at those pictures almost every day because it kind of just gives me a little tiny inkling of maybe the kind of peace and tranquility and awe that I might experience one day in heaven. There were massive trees, right, that kind of shot up into the sky and were huge. Right? It sparks my imagination for one day, man, what's it going to be like to see the tree of life? And this is a real, actual existence that we're going to have. And right, followers of Jesus say, listen, when I'm swimming upstream, when I'm looking to live life with God in the midst of chaos and trouble and sin and disease and you name it, I'm longing for the day that my rest is going to come. I'm longing for the day when I'm going to be able to enjoy God. I'm not going to have to worry about temptation anymore. I don't have to worry about not falling into evil or even experiencing evil from others anymore. One day, we are going to live life with God in this perfected situation, which is going to be characterized by all of the amazing parts of who God is. Right? So heaven will be anything but boring. Heaven is going to be an amazing existence for us to be able to explore and enjoy and kind of delight in God. So think of everything that we might find enjoyment here on the planet that is clean and pure, right, and without sin. Pieces of those are going to show up, of course, in heaven. So this is the fascinating thing, is in this life, that's what I'm looking for, that's what I'm longing for. And the people who say, listen, I want to be with God, are going to find themselves in eternity with God. That's kind of the flip side is also true. If in the midst of God's offer and invitation, the midst of his mercy and his calling out to us, if we continually, repeatedly say, no, God, I'm good, thanks, but no thanks, I'm out. Like, I don't want to be in on that. I don't want to receive your forgiveness. I know that your son came, laid down his life for me, I'm out. If over and over and over after invitation and offer of mercy and grace is continually rejected, eventually God will kind of give us the desire of our heart if we're on that road, and we're going to, of course, then have an eternity without God. Eternity without God, of course, this is kind of what we often refer to as hell. God doesn't just send people to hell. Ultimately, we kind of choose that. We choose to say no to God over and over and over again. And eventually God's like, okay, if that's what you want, I'm going to give you the desire of your heart. If you don't want to be with me, you won't be. On the flip side, if you want to be with me, you will be. Right? And when we look at life, this life is not about who won the election or didn't win it. It's not about even the trajectory of a country or not. It's bigger than that. It's about the eternity that individuals are trending towards. It's about the eternity that you and I are trending towards. It's not just it's not a battle for a nation. It's a battle for a soul. And at the end of the day, the battle for our soul is going to be the thing that defines our time here on the planet. When we look back on the other side of this line, we're not going to think about 2020 and who won the election. And that's where it really all came together. That's where it all fell apart. We're not going to look back at our time here on the planet and think, what was my net worth? Did I have as much comfort as I wanted to have? Did I get to do everything that I wanted to do? From the other side of this line, what we're going to do is look back, and the only things that are going to matter are things that will show up in eternity. They're ultimately the things that I do in response to moving towards God and his invitation to be a part of his family and to receive his forgiveness and mercy, or looking at that invitation and rejecting it. That's going to be the stuff ultimately that will matter for us, right? When we swim upstream, we're looking, envisioning. A follower of Jesus looks forward to that future, and we want to continue to cultivate our imagination for what that day is going to be. Because I don't know about you, man. When I've got a vacation coming, I live a little bit differently. When I know that there's a break, when there's a moment to enjoy, the weeks and sometimes even the months leading up to that, to know that there's kind of an end of the line to where I'm going to be able to take a rest, it causes me to live differently. There's probably a different sense of urgency and efficiency. There's a willingness to endure hardship, I think, that grows up. I know that there's kind of a finish line, so to say. I think you function that way too, right? It's kind of the end of the semester. The vacation is coming, the break, the deadline's on the other side of that. We all tend to function that way, and I think that stuff is built into us because in life there really is an end point to this experience, and there's a beginning point to the next one. The thread that runs through all of it is we live life with God or we live life without him. That will carry with us through, and in this life, I can live by faith with God. Eventually, I'll live by sight and be with him. The same's kind of true here. I either kind of reject and choose not to believe in God, and eventually that will result in an eternity without him. So I want to look at swimming upstream and say, oh yeah, I can endure difficulty here on the planet. I can be an alien. I can be a stranger. I can be a foreigner. I cannot fit in. I can be persecuted. It's okay. Why? There's a heavenly country coming. There's a better one coming. My home is coming. I'm headed that way. I'm moving towards it. I'm swimming upstream. And in the meantime, I want to make sure that my heart, my soul is doing what it's designed to do, which is live life with God, and I want to help other people to do whatever I can to help them make the jump from living life without God to living life with Him. Jumping switch, the battle for that soul ends up becoming the major priority of my life, because if I really believe that heaven is real and I really believe that hell is real, then I can't do anything but be consumed by where the people that I love are going to land, right? That's going to consume my prayers. That's going to consume, at some point, the way that I interact and serve and sacrifice and show the love of Christ. It's ultimately going to show up in my conversations with people, is because if I believe this is true and I believe this is ultimately the picture of reality, and somebody I love is on this, I want to labor and strive to help them find the love and the grace of God. Now, we know that no one can change someone's soul. Only God can do that, but we get to partner with Christ. We are His ambassadors, the Bible says, to try to make peace between kind of two broken situations, right? That's the idea. That's what Jesus came to do, to bring peace between us and God. Now, ultimately, I think this has to be kind of our landing point for the conversation and really for the series, is to ask the question, what battle am I fighting for? What is it that is the consuming effort of my heart and my life? What nation am I aiming at? Is it this nation? Is it the here and now? Is it making my life and my experience of this life comfortable in the way that I think it should roll? Is it making America something that I hope that it can be? Or is my focus and my vision broader than that, deeper than that, higher than that, where I'm focused on a heavenly country? Right? Guys, this life that we live, it's passing by. It's happening right now. And for me, I feel an urgency that I want to live life with God. And I want to battle for the hearts and the souls of people who, like me, didn't know or don't know Christ. Right? I went half of my life not knowing about the goodness of God, the kind of hope that I could have, the kind of purpose that I could have. And I don't want to live the rest of my life not being engaged in helping other people find what people have helped me find, which is the love and the mercy, the forgiveness of Christ. Right? This is swimming upstream. We are something different, and we love differently, and we are headed somewhere different. Our ultimate goal, right, isn't just you only live once, so live it up and enjoy yourself, right? Because who knows? We could just die, and then that would be the end of it. We view this life as an investment that we make with God, giving ourselves away like Jesus did, because we know our rest is coming. Heaven is coming. It is real, and we're going to be able to enjoy life together, life with God, no longer in the pain of disease and sickness and disappointment and frustration and job loss and financial stress and marital stress and kids stress and you name it. The rest is coming. And one day we're going to be able to look Jesus in the face, the one who laid down his life for us. And we're going to be able to say, thank you. Thank you for saving me from myself, from the downstream culture that is sucking me into fear and division. Thank you for rescuing me and causing me to awaken to a reality that I would never see on my own. So if you're listening to this and maybe you're like me, and you would say, yeah, I'm like the guy that knows some Christians or been around church, and I've kind of stiff-armed God. Maybe you've been nervous that God isn't going to meet you with mercy. You're worried he's going to meet you with judgment. Let me tell you that nothing could be further from the truth. God sent Jesus to love you and to forgive you. And I brought a boatload of sin into my relationship with Christ. I had a lot of baggage bringing into it. And what I found when I came to Christ is I found forgiveness for my sin. I found reception into his family. That has been true of my experience in the church. If it hasn't been true of yours, let's try again. And I'm going to tell you, you can find a family in the people of God. But if you've never said yes to Jesus, the Jesus who loves you and laid down his life for you, there's nothing that matters more this side of eternity than what we do with Christ. If you never made that decision, simply open your heart to Jesus. Tell him where you've been. Just there's no magic words. You can just say it. I'm lost. I'm scared. I'm confused. Forgive me, God, for what I've done. Will you forgive me? I want to follow you. I want to live life with God. I want to spend eternity with him. That's the road I want to be on. In your own words, you say that to God today, and he'll grant you the desire of your heart, even if it hasn't been the desire of your heart for most of your life. Even if you've been faking it, you've been in church your whole life, you might realize you don't actually know God. Make the switch today. Today is the day of salvation. It's now. It's happening. And there's an urgency to us connecting with the God who made us, receiving his love and forgiveness, and being on the road that he's created for us to be on. As we wrestle that through, would you pray? Would you think? Would you be open to swimming upstream, to living differently? Would you pray with me? Father, I don't know if I'll ever truly understand why you have been so gracious to me, or why you've been so willing to forgive, why you've been willing to continue to extend your arm, extend your hands of grace and mercy. Lord, when I continue to fail you, even as your follower, Lord, I need you, and I drift from you. And you continue to call me back, because you know that's the desire of my heart, and because your mercy is greater than my heart. And Lord, I just pray for all of us here, Lord, that you would work within us and create in us an urgency to know you, an urgency to live life with you, and to help others to do the same. Lord, help cultivate for us a higher vision than just what we experience here on the planet. Cultivate our vision, Lord, for eternity, and help us today to move towards that destination, to move towards you and living life with you and choosing you in the here and now. Lord, we give you our attention, our focus, our time, our energy, and we ask that you would meet us in it and help us to be your people. It's in your name that we pray, Jesus. Amen.